and all the quality of your blood vessels. I always talk about the blood vessels as like the most important organ in your body, right? So it's the infrastructure for everything. So for quality of what we call the endothelium, which is the lining of your blood vessels, first we test. So there's a bunch of blood markers that we can test that look at how well that system's working. Whether you're able to release nitric oxide, these markers called ADMA. There's a bunch of separate markers that we look at. The patients that I have that are already plant-based, their endothelium works great. The people that are eating kind of your standard Western diet without a lot of plants and lots of animal products, especially dairy and things like that, their endothelium just doesn't work very well.
Let's dive into that. So let's differentiate, because I would say that a standard American diet or a standard Western diet isn't just rich in animal protein. It's Twinkies and Oreos and, potato chips and French fries and all that good stuff. So to isolate maybe to the higher end of the scale, let's take somebody who their primary calorie is derived from meat, and then somebody whose primary calories are derived from plant matter, but both of them are eating, and maybe you won't agree on this word, but they're eating a clean diet, right? So it's not fast food hamburgers and stuff like that. It's, grass fed. But I just want to get a sense of what happens to the endothelial lining when you're a meat eater, clean again, versus a plant-based diet, clean.
So clean versus clean, what you're normally going to see in the labs that I get here. So this is not just literature. This is what I see.
Sure.
And I get a lot of athletes that come in that are eating really clean meats, right? They're either wild or they're all organic, and they're pretty balanced. They're not eating too many calories and stuff like that. But their inflammation markers are always higher than my plant-based clean people. And the people that are, majority plant-based, and for me in the labs that I've looked at, when you get down to about 20% calories from animals, 80% plants, you're just about as good as somebody that's 100% plants.
And sorry, is that by calorie?
By calorie.
So one of the things that I found as an argument very compelling is this idea that, look, if you're trying to build muscle tissue, eat muscle tissue. And when you think about all the things that we need to eat to maintain our body, it makes sense to me that you would go eat the very same things that you need to build in terms of the building blocks. And I'm curious if you have a hypothesis, because I'm sure it's still early days, but if you have a hypothesis as to why meat in particular creates this cascade of inflammation, which when I think about all-cause mortality, it's like, get your inflammation down.
So before I answer that question, what I want to do and what I'm focusing on in the clinic is we want to go beyond what nature created for us in the environment. We want to optimize. Your average person isn't even close to their genetic potential. So we want to go beyond your genetic potential. And so when we apply that to food, what we're noticing is that if you eat a lot of meat, your pH is usually off. The more acidic your environment, the more problems you have with what's called calcifications. So you get dystrophic calcifications. You get it in the arteries, you get it in everything else. And that's part of aging, is that stiffening. We don't want stiffening. So that's one thing we want to modulate is pH. The other thing is, like, we have, 25 or 30 years of Dean Ornish in his studies, and now we have Dr. Esselstyn's studies of they can reverse arteriosclerosis with a plant-based diet.
That's interesting. So I'm pitching a reality show around town that I'm trying to get produced called Carnivore versus Vegan. And I want to lock identical twins in a house, and one part of the twin set is eating carnivore and the other side is eating vegan. My fantasy would be to lock them in there for 6 months and do all kinds of blood markers plus self-reporting, all of that, so that we have like a real controlled thing. Because when I hear a study like that, and in total fairness, I don't know those studies well enough to comment. I've heard Dean Ornish's name thrown around a million times, but I'm not familiar with the data specifically tied to that anyway. Oftentimes what happens is you take somebody who's on a standard American diet, they're eating garbage, uncontrolled, just a mess. Right. And if you put them on any diet, their life is going to get better. If you put them on a carnivore diet, it would get better. Sure. If you put them on a vegan diet, it's going to get better. So what are the studies that we should look at for moving away from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet and the clearing up the arteries?
I would just definitely look up Dr. Dean Ornish and his studies, and I'd also look up Dr. Esselstyn. Dr. Esselstyn, he's a cardiologist, and he's been doing plant-based diet for a long time.
And do you know what the rough protocols were for the diets? Just take a normal person and put them pure plant-based?
Yeah, just do pure plant-based. But they're not doing, I mean, there's vegans that are eating all that fake stuff, right? Fake meat, fake this, junk
And is
food.
that a problem because they end up using a lot of sugar, or is there another issue?
Yeah, because remember, one of the reasons of aging is glycation end products. So one of the regular tests you see even your regular doctors measure is hemoglobin A1C. And that's a measure of glycation end product on a red blood cell. And that number is logarithmic. So somebody that has a 5 versus a 6 has 10 times less, right? And if you go to a 7, you're like, well, it's not that much better. We have 100 times more. So if your body has to make 100 times more replacement proteins and then have to deal with all of that, it's going to fail. Not only is it going to fail, but you're using so much energy to do something that it shouldn't have to do. And as we get older, we have less energy. So that's part of age reversal and anti-aging is let's maximize how much energy we have and let's minimize how much we have to access the DNA and make a lot of proteins. Because that's what happens as you get older is you don't have this ability to do that. So you want to have kind of a low protein diet. So if you look at a lot of the studies in the blue zones with people that have lived 100 years and plus, the one commonality around that is they're all on low protein diets. So I've been plant-based for 22 years now, and I have a pretty low protein. I kind of count to make sure I keep my protein.
Can you give me some numbers around that? When you say low protein, and I'm assuming this is the vast majority is coming from plants, what's your rough protein grams per day?
So, people will say somewhere you need about a gram for every kilogram, and high-end athletes are doing a gram per pound. So if you weigh 200 pounds in body weight, if you're a high-end athlete, what the normal prescription is for that is to give you 200 grams of protein per day. I'm probably down to 60 to 70% of that 1 kilogram or 1 gram per kilogram. So maybe I'll get 50 grams a day of protein. And I don't have any trouble. I don't have any trouble rock climbing. I don't have any trouble doing yoga. I'm third black in Kung Fu. I can squat and deadlift, multiple times my body weight. So I don't believe in that. And when I get people to say that, I'm just like, well, how can I do this? And how can all these other plant-based diets do these extraordinary feats of strength or endurance with low protein? Right? Because your body has this amazing ability to recycle protein. And it's the nitrogen cycle. And so, you'll work out and you break down protein, but you're not just going to get rid of it. A healthy body is going to take that and recycle it and put it back. Plus, if you're on the right supplements that help you do that, like, glutamine's one of them, ornithine alpha-ketoglutarate, which is a fantastic supplement, created by the French scientists for burn patients. Because nobody's losing more protein and nitrogen than a burn patient. So there's lots of ways that you can optimize how your body makes protein and how your body recycles protein and uses those amino acids efficiently, rather than just flooding your body with that supplement.